This is A New Angle, a show about cool people doing awesome things in and around Montana. I'm your host, Justin Angle. This show is supported by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Hey folks, welcome back, and thanks for tuning in. Today is our March edition of Incentives and Instincts, a recurring series in which I speak with economist and friend Bryce Ward about some of the broader challenges facing our society. Bryce, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be here, Justin.
So a couple years back, we chatted with University of Montana men's basketball coach Travis DeCure about the youth sports industrial complex. We still get comments about that episode fairly frequently. So we're revisiting youth activities today. You and I commiserate about our overcommitted and overscheduled kids quite a bit. Before we get into the meat of the conversation, just give me a sketch of how overextended your kids are. What's the average after-school day look like for you?
I'm quite happy that basketball season is almost over because all three of the kids are in basketball. So then I've got one in robotics, I got one in soccer, I got volleyball at various random 7 to 9 at night things.
Yep. It's a race.
There's always things going on. There's always something else that you could be doing, right? It's not even there's always necessarily you're required to be here, but then there's these various optional things or whatever it is. And sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. If you add it all up for kind of non-school-based youth activities, you're typically looking at anywhere, including commuting time, tends to be at least 6 hours a week. And that's not necessarily including all of the full weekend tournament travel, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, you do that across 3 kids. If you're lucky, you can get those to align at the same time. So then you can claw back time for other stuff. But in the worst of the worlds, you're doing that and you do a couple of activities. Yeah, it's absurd.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. I've got one dancer. She is dancing at the studio, I don't know, on the order of 20 hours a week. And then we're in travel season, so traveling around the country, performing and so forth. And my other child is a basketball player. Fortunately, she's in high school now, and so the school system takes over as the dominant activity, but both of them have music lessons, and the basketball player wanted a little extra coaching, so we've taken them to a private coaching place to work on their skills here in town. But it's another thing. It's another thing you pay for. It's another thing that feels like you need to do it in order to give her a shot at the success that we think they want. Anyway, we're going to press on all of these levers, but this just outline at the onset is just to show listeners like, this is a system that Bryce and I are critical of, confused by, but also participate in willingly. I suppose it's willingly, but we're in it.
It's a network effect. The time and the opportunity cost that really make me go, okay, what are we getting out of this?
Let's start here. Why? Why are we doing this? So we want our kids to be educated. We want our kids to develop in some way, some important ways. We talk a lot on this show about the need for better humans. A lot of the problems we talk about distill down to the need for better humans. And I know that a listener might bump at that. It feels like it's a very loaded concept. How do you define what a better human is? And who are you to decide? Let's just set that aside for a moment and just agree that parents want their kids to develop in some way. And we have schools, we've got education, and we've got other things that they do outside the home. I suppose a premise we could pursue is we want them to develop some set of values, right?
Portion of this is just consumption. There's value in just having fun things to do with your time. And as a parent, it's a way to buy into a community.
Sure.
Right? In fact, some of the most functional things that look like community that I'm involved with are centered around kids' sports. So there's a consumption aspect to it. On the investment side, so this is like school. You're investing time, money, resources.
Yeah.
What are you trying to get out of it? And there are some people who are actually trying to make this into some form of this is going to be your career or whatever it is. Yeah, your odds are not good, right? Your odds aren't even that good of college ball. They're slightly better, and depending on the sport you're in or the activity you're in, there are plenty of opportunities. But even then, it's still tends to be top 1%.
So the segment of the population for whom a career in the sport is a viable prospect, let's just agree that's a pretty small portion of the base here.
I think we have to look at the investment in what you started with, right? This isn't about the sport-specific skill. The sport-specific skill is supposed to be a means to achieving other more general purpose skills that are going to be useful to your life, right? Pursuing a goal, figuring out how to be a part of a team or a community, figuring out what your role is, achieving something collectively. There's all sorts of social skills about like how to get along with people. And, there's all sorts of that kind of stuff that I think is the reason why we pursue the investment portion of it. I don't think that's what's driving the system.
Even the things you just described there, it occurs to me that those are beliefs, right? Like they're not values. The value, for example, like I want to develop trust. That's a value. Then I have a belief of the way I develop trust or the way I help my child develop trust is to put them in a collaborative environment where they have to work toward a collective goal, right? So that's the belief. That sort of condition will be a way to build the value of trust. And then we say, okay, if that's the thing we believe in, how do we find opportunities for them to do that? We look to youth sports, we look to various clubs, whatever sort of activities where they have to work in tandem with other people. They have to receive feedback from an authority figure, a coach, a teacher, whatever that is. And as you just alluded to a moment ago, like the system as it's constructed is sort of at this outcome level, right? It's built to win games or win competitions or provide access or whatever that is. And it doesn't seem like it's aligned with those values that are on the other end of the continuum.
Yeah, we've created a disconnect between what we want to imbue sports with, which are like, it's really hard to teach values, right?
Yeah.
I can sit you down in a classroom and
it's hard and it's fraught.
Yeah. Right? I can sit you down in a classroom and I can tell you things, but to ultimately learn how to develop the muscle of, oh, this is what it means to overcome conflict with a teammate, or this is what it means to trust that this teammate's going to do the thing that we're supposed to do and feel good. I think that's why we do them, right? They're wonderful microcosms for a lot of the things we do in life that you can do as a child. They don't require you to be a computer programmer and work together with other computer programmers to solve some problem. The arts are also part of this.
Absolutely.
Right? If you go to MCT, right? Getting together over some of the summer camp, right? Like over the week, you're going to take 60 kids and you're going to put on an entire musical. That's a real collective enterprise. You have to figure out how to work together and what your role is. And you get to learn, oh, that person isn't doing their thing. Sometimes what we're learning in sports is, oh, I don't want to be the person who didn't learn their lines or didn't do what the coach said on the basketball floor. But it's this messy, hard to break down, but it does seem to work kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And those values, they exist in it, but with the privatization and the shift, particularly out of schools, everything was built around school sports, which have interesting constraints on them. There's always going to be exceptions to this or whatever, but you played with the kids at your school in your grade, which meant that part of what you had to learn was, this is who we have.
This is your community.
This is my community. This is what we have within my community. And we are going to go off and compete for our community when then the community was actually behind you.
And there's something important in that too. You are representing an institution and a community. Like I took that as a high school, as a college athlete, I took that really seriously, probably more seriously than I maybe should have. But like, I felt like I was representing an institution in an important way. It felt like a responsibility.
You were told that.
Yeah.
You were given your jersey. You're now representing the school. And it comes with...
That's a contract.
I mean, when I was in high school, we had to dress up when we had basketball games.
Absolutely.
Right? Yep. You're representing the school. You're going to get on a bus. You're going to walk into another school. You're going to look good. And this was all just part of, again, the values, the construction of the system was Yeah, individuals could get glory. It was part of the education. And it was part of representing, and you wanted to beat the other schools, right? It was about pride in the school.
Yeah.
Pride in the community. And again, there's plenty of exceptions to this, but it mattered that you won. It didn't matter how you did. I didn't care about how I wanted to do well, but like, I really just wanted the team to win.
Yeah.
That was the goal.
Yeah. The team performance was more important than the individual performance. And that was a general rule. Like, I was much more happy if I had a bad game in a game that the team won than I had a great game in a game that the team lost.
Yeah, no, like the only bad feeling I can remember, and unfortunately I was with a cohort of good athletes, like I can remember the games that we lost. Yeah, I could not tell you how I did in any of these games, but I can tell you like how I felt when like whatever one kid who was like big and super athletic somehow managed to beat our team. And it was like, what happened? I wasn't a parent, so I can't tell you what parents were thinking at the time. The thing that occasionally gets discussed in parent circles now is there's distinctions amongst teams, right? And some people who are coaches for lots of teams or whatever it is, sometimes they'll comment on, this team's really great because the parents are actually interested in the team succeeding. Whereas on my other team, I got parents who are not only, they're literally just there for their kid. They're actively rooting against the other players on the team because it means that their kid may not play as much.
Your kid will get more playing time. But I think there's something in here that translates to the attitude that we as parents, and I say that this in a collective sense, bring to the choices we're making for our own children. I want my kids to have those similar experiences, to represent a community in a collective way, to work toward a collective goal, to learn resilience, to be able to move through defeat, to take individual critical feedback and respond to it, to stress and adapt. We talk about stress and adapt a lot on this segment. So I want them to be exposed to those experiences, to have the privilege of engaging them. And so I'm making decisions now as a parent that feel if I don't put them in these private experiences that I have to pay for and are subject to all kinds of different market forces that we'll get into, if I don't participate in that system, I am foreclosing the opportunity for them to participate in the public system eventually. If they don't do the private sports as a younger kid, they're off the treadmill. And if they get off the treadmill, they won't have a chance of making the high school team when they get there. We'll be back to my conversation with Bryce Ward after this short break. A New Angle is proudly presented by First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. This show does not happen without these pillars of our community, and I'm so grateful for their support and encouragement. And speaking of support, have you checked out our new website yet? anewanglepodcast.com. There you can support our show directly with a variety of subscription options. Subscribers get access to bonus episodes, additional segments, writings, and other benefits. So check it out at anewanglepodcast.com.
Hey, this is Ryan Tutel of ESPN Radio in Missoula, and you're listening to A New Angle.
Welcome back to A New Angle. I'm here with Bryce Ward, talking about the Youth Activities Industrial Complex.
The amount of time I've spent trying to figure out what the production function of athletic ability is, because that's the question.
Yeah.
Do I need to do all of this stuff from this early age? Or can I just ignore it and then do these things at this age and suddenly get myself right on ramp? Because half of the problem with youth sports is your ceiling as an athlete, that's a real biological thing.
Yep.
But it's not revealed until you've developed.
Yeah, and it varies across the population and when it's revealed.
When it's revealed. So there's this unknown that lurks in the heart of the system.
Yeah.
And so you're just sitting there going, I don't even know, should I be bothered investing in basketball? Am I going to have a body that's going to be a viable basketball body? You know, or whatever the sport is. And so that's sitting in there. There's this, I just don't know, right? And then it becomes, okay, you backward induce. If you show up in 7th grade and start playing basketball at that point in time, but you've never really played, well, now you are behind because you haven't invested enough time in the skills. And so, yeah, you don't get enough time, so you don't get to more development. There really is an endogeneity in terms of, what, and we don't have enough different models of, over here, they did this thing. And it turns out that if you just do these things at this point, we can get you fully caught up. Or maybe this is just, again, it's a collective action problem, right? Maybe the right solution is that, actually all of these youth basketball tournaments below grade whatever are an entire waste of time, right? You would just be better off if you took all of that time and energy and did these other things. We're not getting enough information, at least into the hands of parents. Across the world, there are enormously different systems, but we don't get to see them. And more importantly, we don't get to choose them. I don't get to sit here in Missoula, Montana and be like, over here, they have the Norway model. And the Norway model is you don't compete for anything until you're 11. You go to the sports club every day, but you just play. You go there and there's like a coach and they basically say, what do you guys want to do today? And the kids go, we want to play tag today. So they run around and play tag. Or we want to play soccer today. Okay, here's a soccer ball. Go play soccer. And they just play. And to the extent that there are kind of competitions or whatever it is, there can be no winners and losers. There's no medals. There's nothing until you're past age 11, I think. We have a market, but we have a market, particularly in a smaller community, that does not provide you different choices or a ton of different choices. And the other problem, again, so much of why you're in this is because you are networked into it. This is a social decision, right? What are my kids' friends doing? Even though maybe I don't like that club or maybe I don't like that club's model, that's where the friends are.
You're right.
So yeah, I can be high-minded and be like, I don't think you should be doing this. All I can do is then go to the club and basically be like, why are we doing this? How about we do this instead? Which I do.
And then you get yourself sitting on the sideline alone. I get my
sideline alone.
But you mentioned market a moment ago. Let's press on that for a moment. Has the fact that we've introduced market forces into this corrupting it in some way? It does feel like a bit of an arms race. We talked in our previous episode about how an expensive club-based system sort of narrows the funnel at the top artificially. It cuts off opportunity for the families that can't afford it, that don't have the access or the resources. If your goal is to develop better athletes at the other end of the funnel, then if you limit access to the funnel at the top, that seems counter to the overall objective.
So obviously the fact that this is a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's often needlessly expensive. We're going to go travel to someplace many hours away for multiple days and incur hotel and meals and sometimes plane and at a minimum driving. And in Montana, some of that's hard to avoid to some degree because we don't have big population centers.
In fairness, the incentives to do that are kind of upstream too. And if you're a player in this system, sometimes you feel this obligation to go on some of these trips because some college coach is going to be there or some talent evaluator. You have to put yourself in a position to have eyes laid on you by some gatekeeper.
Part of the sport-specific skill development is the challenge of finding the right level of competition to help you increase your skill and understanding. Stress and adapt. You have to find the right level of team to play against that forces you to be like, oh, if you're good in your area, you got to find somebody who can really push you. Individual skill is not just about your genetic ceiling. It's about the stress and adapt cycle that you go through to develop it. And part of how you end up in the system that we have is if you really want to pursue excellence, you got to be on a good team, right? And if you're in a neighborhood or a community that doesn't have the right level of skill in your age group, in your geography, this is the tension. This is the real trade-off is I'm basically saying I'm okay with some people who not developing their individual skills because I would rather preserve the culture of community and finding a role and just making do with what you have, because that's the real lesson that I think you want to learn. But if you're saying, no, I'm just trying to find and develop all of the best talent, right? Then we should be taking the best player in a weak area. And yeah, we want to pull you over here. Let's take you out of your neighborhood and put you into our neighborhood and make our team better. As you pursue that individual goal, right? Or pursue that, we don't care about this as an actual embodiment of a community. It's just this team must win.
Mm-hmm.
What about the kid that's in the neighborhood whose spot got taken? And there's this kind of constant shuffling, and now we're no longer a part of communities. It's just everybody seeking their individual outcome. And again, this is where you started, is seeking an individual outcome.
Right.
It's only about, did I get minutes? Did I get to play? Maybe my team won or lose. I didn't care, right? Did I play well? Did I get minutes, right?
So we lose sight in search of this outcome, this hyper focus on the outcome. We lose sight of that belief. We lose sight of the value, right? Those upstream virtues. We like to think that we're doing all this in service of those virtues, but then we get so caught up in the outcome, and then the system is orienting itself toward that outcome.
Once you go into the outcome world, it's just competition.
Yeah.
Markets don't produce values. They care about outcomes. And historically, we've always had something kind of balancing against the hyper focus on individualism, outcome. Because once you're into that world, is it okay to cheat to win? Do whatever to get the outcome that you want. In fact, the thing that's literally lurking behind this very episode, I was at a basketball tournament and I saw a kid, maybe 7 years old, wearing a Nike branded shirt with the phrase, "play me or trade me." And I looked at it and I was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Entirely zero-sum thinking. It's not about, did the team win? It's literally, play me or trade me. It's only about me.
Yeah, there's so much wrong with that soundbite.
But that's what Coach DeCure talks about when he's looking at a high school transcript. It's very rare that he sees a kid who stayed at one high school for 4 years.
Or the number of schools that the kid has been at is inversely proportional to his interests. The more the kid has moved around, like that's seen as a red flag that he's shopping around for playing time.
This is pervasive. We got a jump club. This club isn't giving us what I want.
Sure.
Like this team isn't giving me what I want. And again, you can't develop the value of as humans. One of the things that I think is underlying many of our problems as a society is we have lost sight of the fact that we are hardwired to want to be contributors in a community. And that means you have to find your way of being a contributor on a community. And that's where youth sports provide an opportunity. It's a community.
Yeah.
What's my role? How do I make this thing better? And if I can't figure that out, that's a problem for me, right? Because life is about, I'm going to parachute into a bunch of different communities, right? Particularly life in the United States in the 21st century where, it's not 1600 and you're going to live within 10 feet of wherever your whole life, and you're just going to be embedded into a community and they're going to assign you a role. Life in America is, particularly when we're getting a little sclerotic, it used to be, you're going to move a bunch, you're going to parachute into new neighborhoods, and you got to then, okay, this is the group. What is my role here? Coming right along with the rise of too much developed sports is the loss of pickup sports, right?
Yeah, free play.
Honestly, I probably got more out of pickup sports than I did out of organized sports. In some sense, organized sports existed to make you so that you were capable of doing pickup sports, because I probably spent more time doing pickup sports than I did organized sports, certainly in the 80s, right? My 6th grade basketball season had 4 games that maybe lasted 3 weeks. But I spent hours a week at Long Ridge Park playing pickup basketball.
Yeah, and there's something in that pickup sports notion that I think is really important. It's self-organizing, and you have to find a way of enforcing a set of rules within a group. And there's no officials, there's no coaches, there's nobody making explicit selections. There certainly is a hierarchy, and that hierarchy can emerge and builds over time. But it is this like self-governing. There's a beauty of self-governance.
So beautiful.
And there's problems with it. Like kids get excluded, and there's problems, right?
Like anything, there's problems. Part of what's wrong in society is that we see the problem and we think, oh, the whole thing is bad because there's a problem.
Right.
Rather than being like, there's a problem, but look at all the good.
Yeah.
And pickup sports, yeah, they're self-organized. Even when you're not just going to the park and playing with randos, I spent a lot of time where we had to marshal. We wanted to get as many guys as we could so we could play 4s or 5s.
You need a critical mass.
And you need a number of people. Again, yeah, no officials. Call your own fouls. There's an honor. My wife does actually coach one of the basketball teams, right? So had a small practice one time because people were gone for various reasons. And
we should just pause and mention that your wife is one of the select few that came out of a Missoula high school to play Division I college basketball.
Yes, she did. So they're out playing pickup rules. And again, these kids, they don't do it. They've almost never done it. And she watched it happen where somebody got pissy at somebody else for not calling a foul.
Yep.
And then the tables turned, and one of the kids was like, you didn't call your one on you. It was like that lovely tit for tat moment of learning the honor of, yeah, I got you. And the frustration of that guy doesn't do it. And sometimes it gets out of control, but it's all very,
it's part of the enforcement mechanism.
Right. And then again, in a larger pickup environment, it's about playing your way onto the team, right? You got to be good enough to get onto the team. You got to get picked. And what's my role on this team? You have to learn. Like I have these different skills, and depending on who's with me, I am now adapting. And these are all, honestly, when I'm yelling at the club basketball, I'm like, why are we at this tournament? Why don't we just go rent a gym for an hour and play pickup? We could have even invited these kids from Missoula and said, hey, bring your kids over. We'll just throw out a ball and say, hey, figure it out. Because to me, that's where the value is. It's not in having a game with, frankly, mediocre officiating and a bunch of parents caring about outcomes. Let's just go play. Let's learn these lessons, because they're learning the organized sports lessons. They're developing more individual skill than I'm guessing anybody in our generation tended to have. But they're not learning the rest of the skills because it's a machine designed to produce wins.
And those skills are the ones that are most closely tied to the values that we want our kids to take away from these experiences. Yeah. So how do we fix it? Typically at this point, we preserve the rest of the conversation for our paid subscribers. Thank you for your support. But this week, we're opening it up to everybody to give you a little taste. Hope you enjoy.
Each activity is its own different thing.
Absolutely.
Right? Like,
we focused a lot on basketball in this conversation. It is basketball season. And some of these principles generalize to other activities, and the solutions will vary as well.
Yeah. So one of the things that's different about basketball is it is a sport you can play with any number of kids.
Yeah.
There's one person and a hoop and a ball. You can play basketball. 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, all the way up to 5-on-5, and even beyond if you want to have benches. So, it has a little bit different than soccer. Obviously, typically you need at least 10.
Yeah.
You need 5s to play soccer because it's a game about passing and movement. And so there's some things that are different about different sports. So recognizing that. But the reality is, given that 90+% of the people who participate in youth sports are never going to play it beyond high school level, the system needs to be organized for them, right? And the network needs to be organized for them. And the first stage of getting it organized in that way is parents need to have the realization that their kid is not going to play D1 sports. It's incredibly hard to reach that level. And maybe they'll get there. Maybe that'll happen. But let's let that be a byproduct of the rest of the system. Let's create the system so that it is, that it's values based, right? Where these are our values, These are the general skills that we're trying to get your kid to learn through participating in this activity. Sport-specific skills will come along with that. And as they get older and actually have developed, and it turns out, yes, you don't need to have done any of this youth stuff. If when you're 14, you decide you want to be a basketball player and you have grown and you've seen what your body's going to be, great. Here's the manual, right? Go spend however many hours a day doing the drills and you'll get there. And so that's part of what we also have to learn. We just need to do more experimentation. The pursuit of the status that comes along with success in athletics is the problem, is because trying to get a golden ticket, right?
Yeah, there's the lottery effect.
There's a lottery effect. So in sprinting, there is an enormous value in pursuing what to those of us who watch is imperceptible. The returns are all like, be one of these guys. And oddly enough, none of them are faster than Usain Bolt. And there's real returns and value and all this kind of stuff. But the social value is basically non-existent. But we've created this structure. We have this thing, it literally is gold, a gold medal, not a golden ticket. And a bunch of people are going to invest a ton of effort in trying to be that much better.
Yeah.
So that they can get the golden ticket. Same thing happens throughout, right? Because again, minutes, playing time, all that stuff, these are zero sum, right? There's a certain number of slots. We don't tend to create a bunch more because there's only so much attention. We focus that attention only on the best. That system of reward creates the poison for the rest of the system because people rightfully are trying to pursue that stuff. And once they try and pursue that stuff, that's where all of the outcome-based, market-driven outcomes come from, is if I can be just a little bit better than you, and I got money, well, they seem like they're pretty close, I bet I can get him ahead of you. And therefore, he's going to get the slot and you're not. And so we just got, there's an arms race component to it.
Yeah, that subtext of money is so huge in this whole conversation that we've been having. The families that have the resources to put into all of these supplemental pursuits of a specific outcome, right? They're not spending in service of a value. They're spending in service of an outcome.
The math of this, right? So we think of what's called a production function, right? And we put inputs into our production function and we achieve some output, right? Yeah. And when it comes to sports, that outcome is always a function of potential, right? Because there's some, like I said, there's some ceiling that you're going to reach that is your potential.
Yeah.
And most people aren't going to ever reach that potential, but that's the max. And people have different levels of inputs that they can put into a production function to get them closer to their potential at any given point. And again, your ultimate potential isn't revealed until later, so there's an inefficiency with that. But that production function is upward sloping. It probably has diminishing returns at some point. But again, we don't know what it looks like. And because we don't know what it looks like, we can make it look like we've developed a ton of talent. Because look, I can watch fourth grade boys basketball game and be like, wow, they're playing pretty high level basketball. If I had literally taken a counterfactual world and taken all of those kids and basically said, you're not going to do any of this stuff, but in 7th grade, we're going to start training you and we're going to watch you in 10th grade. Will I be able to tell the difference? I don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Run that experiment.
We haven't run the experiment.
Yeah.
My hypothesis is you would not be able to tell it.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a parent that feels like they're caught in this network trap and they don't necessarily like it, but they feel like the alternative is worse?
Try and change the network effect.
Yep.
Hey, let's do this instead of this. It's hard, right? That's just the problem with network effects. It's a tough thing to break out of a network effect unfortunately, without some oversight, right?
Yeah.
That's the problem. But until somebody, has the ability to be like, no, we're not going to do these things anymore. And sometimes the oversight organizations have done things to change things, but that's ultimately what it takes. Is it takes some organization. The whole idea of a network effect is as an individual, you can't break it. All you can do is opt in or out. But oftentimes opting out has enormous costs and it just doesn't work. So you need collective action and power to then be like, no, we're not doing these things anymore. These things are out. This is the goal, all of that kind of stuff. It's the proverbial sports czar, youth sports czar, who basically says, okay, even if we don't know right now what the right thing is to do, we're going to do a bunch of experiments. We're going to go to this part of the country and we're going to say, hey, you're going to do things this way. And we're going to actually study it. We're going to look at player development. We're going to look at parent satisfaction and kids satisfaction. And one of the more disturbing things is that kids do not like the system.
That's telling.
I looked this up, right? After seeing a bill for one of the kid club activities, I was like, is this worth it? I literally was like doing the math of how much if I took the money and I put it all aside and I invested in the S&P 500 and I just let it compound. Every time I was going to write a check to the club, I went to my Vanguard account and said, here you go. Like, how much money could I give them the day they went to college?
Yeah.
For one sport, for one kid, only doing it through 8th grade, it was like $40,000.
And in some ways, you could make an ethical argument that as a parent, you should give your child that option.
And that was what I was like, do I need to have this conversation? Should I just give you do you really want this? Or would you rather have $40,000 when you're 18? Obviously, he doesn't know. She doesn't know. I found a survey of former youth sports participants. Now, the one problem with the survey is it wasn't everybody being asked at 20. It was a survey that was done of a cross section, but it had people that were 70 and people that were 20. And the people that were 40, 50, 60, when they said, oh, when thinking about your youth sports experience, it was overwhelmingly positive. Looking at people in their 20s, it was substantially less positive.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's not clear that we just haven't forced but the only way to have that is through collective action, which we are not good at doing.
Trying different things, trying to break it up, trying to do something different. So a couple things that occur to me as we close here. One is just encourage folks to get in touch with what value you're trying to impart in your child through these choices that you're making. And then second, we've lamented a lot of the challenges associated with the system as it's currently constructed. But I will say, from my perspective, as somebody who interfaces with college freshmen, about 400 a year, it's not a general rule, but the kids that have gone through experiences where they take constructive feedback, critical feedback, and have to figure out how to work their way through it as a pathway to improving, those kids seem much more better equipped to handle college and to handle jobs and to handle the challenges that adulting bring. So there is a lot of value that these experiences in competition and in the business of internalizing feedback, those experiences are really valuable.
No, look, the happiest I am watching a kid in youth sports is when they come home and they're like, how could I have been better?
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. We want that.
I want that. Yeah.
We're out of time. And as it were, I need to go pick up my daughter to take her to physical therapy as part of her rehab from an ACL tear and the associated surgery suffered in basketball practice. So there's some, here we go. Thanks, Bryce.
Yeah, thank you, Justin.
Thanks for listening to A New Angle. If you like what we do and want to support us directly, please consider a subscription at anewanglepodcast.com. A New Angle is recorded at Studio 49, a generous gift from UM alums Michelle and Lauren Hansen. Our presenting sponsors are First Security Bank, Blackfoot Communications, and the University of Montana College of Business. Kelly Larson is our producer. Maddie Jordan is our production assistant. VTO, Jeff Ament, and John Wicks made our music, and Jeff Meese is our master of all things sound. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.